Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to another wonderful day over here with the SBDC. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. We offer no-cost services to the local businesses through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, GoBiz. The Los Angeles Regional Small Business Development Center network serves small businesses throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. We offer no-cost business advising, meaning you can meet one-on-one via phone or Zoom to address your specific needs and challenges. And we also offer virtual training, such as this great workshop to help adapt and grow your business. So, Lori, hello. Let us hear that wonderful, energetic voice of yours.
Good morning. We were just talking about the fact of having a lot of energy, and I was telling everybody that when I was younger, my father used to always, threaten me, "Can you just sit down and be quiet for a second? I bet you can." And I think now, well, good thing I couldn't because I make a lot of money on, just speaking and having a ton of energy. So good morning, everybody. Welcome, welcome. So I'm very excited to be introducing our guest in a bit. I've got a few things to go over, but one of the things I wanted to remember to tell everybody is I know we have the party in the chat. I love that you communicate with each other and inspiration. It's the most wonderful part of the show. Be sure when you put information into the chat to click to everyone, because what is happening, I noticed that Zoom is doing this where it automatically goes host and panel. So sometimes I see your wonderful message and nobody else gets to see it. And I'm always wanting to make sure I bring that up. So I'm going to start reminding people to do that. Okay, guys, here we go with today. We're going to start out with a little bit of information. So I've got my upcoming classes, the financial literacy series, as always. I am bringing back Should You Be Charging Your Customers Sales Tax at the beginning of June. A lot of people think when they're selling outside of California, especially, they may not be needing to charge sales tax, and that might not be so. The laws changed in 2019. So if you have any questions about whether you should be charging sales tax or not on services as well as products, that would be join in on that webinar and you'll learn a bit. Here's our upcoming shows. Next week, we got Samara coming on, to those frequent flyers that are there with me all the time. She is my HR expert, right? And so I wanted her to come on and talk about like some of the new rules that are coming into play. And as always, we'll talk about AB5 because that affects if you can hire independent contractors. And that's always a hot topic. So we'll bring that up again. Then on June 12th, I got Chris Marquez coming on, and he's a sound engineer and musician. I've never interviewed a sound engineer and musician. So we're going to all learn together. I'm very excited to have him on and talk about his company. And then I've asked Clarissa to come back on. You guys probably are very familiar with it if you've been with me for a while. She is our accounting expert, owner of Nerdy Number Lovers. And what I'm wanting her to talk about is some of the common mistakes she sees in the QuickBooks file or the Zero file, whatever software you may be using, especially after tax season. You might have had your tax preparer saying this file didn't work or this wasn't correct. So I thought this would be a good time to kind of address those type of issues. Okay, my words of wisdom for today, guys. I'm going to fly by something really quick, okay? I've been following this little sequence I've been doing. I'm going to bring the dance steps together. And Sadie's going to put my information, which you already seen it, in there. If you need to get in touch with me and say, Lori, go over that again, I really want to know more, please do, because I'm going to go through it fast. So we started talking 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, about thoughts about thoughts. The power of questions. How do you know? What do you know to be true? How do you know it? And I was bringing this up because I'm seeing so many people, they believe they're profitable, but they're really not. And they've been in, problems and financially, et cetera. So I'm really trying to bring this concept to your front of mind. You say you're profitable. You think you're making money. All I need is sales and I'll be fine. How do you know that's true? There's financial ways to map your beliefs and identify true or false. So that's what I'm trying to get into your mind's eye, right? So then I said, okay, this was a powerful exercise to engage in, and Sadie put it in the chat, and I can do that again if you need, but to ask these questions. How much am I selling each product or service for? How many units am I selling? How much does it cost? What is the overhead? What's left over? And then how much do I need to sell to be profitable? And you keep going through steps 3 through 5. Okay. And so I said, that's the key. You want to ask these questions. Well, now I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you something really quick here. And I know people love when I do these little models, and you're going to go, oh, I want to see that again. Here's how you take those questions and you put it in a model. All I did is I made this is the facts. I said, what am I selling the units for? $16. What is the cost of a unit? 7. How much do I have left over? Gross profit. Okay, I got 9. What's my overhead? I made up numbers here, $170. Well, then I make this little model where I say, well, what if I sell 10, and I make sure that the model says I have 10 cost of goods? How much money will I have left over? 80. The key I'm doing is I'm taking and I'm looking at not just the revenue, not just the cost, I'm doing the overhead. So I can say, well, how many units do I need to sell to make $1 profit? Like, what's the minimum I have to sell every single month? And I just plug in numbers so I can play with it till I get $1. If I say my benchmark is I want to make $500, then I can go, well, how many units do I have to sell to make 500 every month? And I can play with the model and let the model tell me the answer, right? And I can say, well, I need to sell about 68, must be about 70. I'm making this up units, right? Now, the key is you make this analogy, you use this model, and then you say a full sentence. You don't just say, I need to sell 70 units. You say, I need to sell 70 units at $16 with a cost of 7. If my overhead is 170, I would get 460. And then you can say, well, what if I hired somebody? Because I can't do it on my own. And you say, well, what if I paid, $100 to hire somebody? How many units do I now have to sell to get where I was before? And how many units do I have to sell to make money? So what am I telling you? Don't just assume you're profitable. You can't sell yourself out of a bad cost model. What you want to do is ask these questions, put it to the test, gather the data, and create a little model and let the model answer the questions for you. And I saw Sadie, you put that in the chat. Thank you so much that you repeated the questions. So once again, on the show, if I just get you to think, that's interesting. Maybe I better look into that, and you get a more awakening to where your financial picture really is, I will have done well. Because guys, every single day of my life, I am meeting with small business owners who didn't do this, didn't know, and now they're in a financial trouble. And I hate emotions, okay? So I went into finance, tax, and legal structure. That shouldn't have emotions, right? Yet every single day I got somebody on the phone crying. I was like, oh my God, I got people crying. I tried to get away from emotions, and here we are. I don't want you to call me crying. Call me to make sure you know where you are while you still have time to make choices. Okay. So that's all I got to say for today on my words of wisdom. So now for some fun. You ready? Areial Lomack, an Oakland, California native and LA transplant, has been triumphantly building her company and expanding her brand through hard work, diligence, and consistency. Ariel's extensive background and elegant taste radiates through her brand. 12 AM is a remarkable shoe company soaring out of Los Angeles with ahead of the curve styles that are fashionable yet functional, as described by the self-identified shoe dealer. Ariel, welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you
There
so
she
much, Lori.
Yeah, thank you for coming on the show. Now, I have been telling the audience that they're going to love this show. And you know what? As we were talking before the show, I want to hear this story too. So, guys, I started working with Ariel just to help her a little bit to get some numbers in order. And I don't know the behind the story, right? But I can see she is doing some fabulous, remarkable things. And her information's there. You can check out her website as we're talking. But first of all, I want to go back, Ariel. What's your background? You've got to be in design or something to design these beautiful products. Where did you come from, Ariel?
Well, like you mentioned, I come from Oakland, California. I grew up with a mom who she sold sterling silver jewelry and purses, like as a side hustler, but not online. Like online was
Right.
not happening there. We used to go to the local flea markets every weekend. So I think that like that really sparked that fashion sense. I'm picking jewelry with my mom. Like I'm going to the San Francisco Jewelry Mart. I'm picking jewelry and rings and bracelets and necklaces, choosing what I think that the, customers will want. So from there, I just continue to grow and build with my mom, helping her. And I think that's what sparked it, whether I recognize it or not then.
Yeah.
And so I did go to school in San Francisco for public health, and I quickly realized that was not for me. Like I love it, and I have a nonprofit, and we're gonna, we do great things within the community. However, like that work was just like it was soul killing for me. So I moved to LA, and I slept on my cousin's couch for like 2 years trying to figure out what I needed to do and what I wanted to do truly. So I started working with a stylist. Her name is Jessica Pastor here. And I was an intern. And then she eventually started paying me like $25 a day. And as I'm working with her, she used to tell me, she was like, hey, like, you got a great work ethic. Like, you don't need to work for anyone. Like, it's all this digital stuff happening. This was when Revolve was popping off and becoming huge with its influencers and its launches and different collaborations. She was just like, there's so much going on online. Like, I really think that you can start like your own brand. Like, I think that you should do it. Like, you don't need a boss. Like, you don't have to go work for another job. Like, start your own brand. I'm like, okay, well, I've always been a shoe girl. I don't really want to do clothes. I've always been a shoe girl. I was the girl that in San Francisco, it's a street called Hate Street, where a bunch of vintage stores, Urban Outfitters, shoe stores are there. I used to go there searching high and low for the most like outrageously different shoe. So if it was a hot Jeffrey Campbell that everyone didn't have, like I was getting it. Or I would stand in line on the weekends for Jordans or the new Air Force Ones or, the most popular shoe that was coming out. So I've always been a shoe girl. So when it came time to like start shoes, I'm like, okay, like this is what I want to do. Like I really love shoes. Like that's my thing. So then from there, that's when the idea launched. And then I just started finding all the resources that I had here in LA that I can do with my work checks. And that's how I began. But I don't have any history. I didn't go to school for fashion. I was raised in it.
That is see, I knew there was a story. I told you there is a story there and I knew it. And it's when you're raised in something versus going to school, I find you're more effective. You have a real life understanding because that was myself as well. All my schooling came later. I was raised in that. And so, and you know what? The person who told you you don't need a boss, you've got a strong work ethic, you should do it on your own, they were correct because that's one thing I noticed in speaking with you and working with you immediately. Man, you are on top of things. So that was a beautiful story. So you get to the point where you say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm assuming from being in LA and with your mom, you understood how to get the contacts and everything from there. So how did you, and people love to hear this because it's one thing to have an idea in your head and it's one thing to even know I go over here to meet with somebody, but there's that bringing it together, designing your first pair of shoes, having to buy a minimum quantity, where you buy it from, figuring out where to sell it. Walk us back to those early stages and how you put all those pieces together to make that first, I'm out there, I'm doing it now.
Yeah, so I don't know, I've always had this thing where I always say like I'm a student. I'm a student. Like I'm very resourceful. I can figure things out. Like I don't have to really ask too many questions. Like I'm gonna find you. Like I found you. We found each other, it's me constantly calling, talking to people, like finding out what I need. And so what I did once that idea was there, I kind of never stopped like dreaming, wishing, trying for it. So, just writing down things in my notebook. I found some of my old notebooks. Like I'm writing all of my plans out. So I wrote my own like business plan. I started with the SBA very early. Just like figuring out how to do a business plan. What does that look like? What is a business supposed to look like? Finding the right resources to start the website. I knew because I did work in fashion, I knew that there were, downtown LA, there's resources. We can buy clothes, we can buy shoes from there. But I started like going downtown LA, and then I found out like, wait, there's another vendor like that I can buy from for like cheaper prices. So I need to find their vendors. So that's kind of like it's just the land we live out here. So people just started talking to me, telling me about market. And then I don't know, start calling around, going to trade shows, just kind of figure things out. This was the time too when Girl Boss with what's her name? Sophia Amorosa, with the Girl Boss clothing brand Nasty Gal. So I like remember listening to her story, and like she was talking about how she went to Vegas and talked to Steve Madden and the reps at Steve Madden and begged to be able to make a purchase order to have that brand in her store. So I'm just like, okay, this is what I gotta do. I gotta go to Vegas. I have to go find vendors and talk to people and get shoes in my store. So it's just doing my research, watching other women that were doing it, and finding inspiration within that. Yeah, I think I've always been super resourceful, and just being here in LA, this is the lay of the land. Like, this is where all those things happen. So it wasn't really too hard to find. And it's just preparing myself, financially preparing myself to be able to go buy my first case of shoes. And then from there, like buying the shoes and getting on the road with that, finding new vendors and reaching out. And then I'm realizing like, okay, it's a cap in how much I can do. Like, there's so many people that are buying from these vendors. Eventually got to a point where I'm like elbowing my way, trying to get and find the right shoes that I want, that that my customers loved what they come to us for. It started getting super hard and very competitive. So then the next step, I'm like, okay, what's the next step in business? Like, the next step is designing your own shoes, and that was really like a dream that I had. And I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to design my own shoe. And then eventually, like, again, I'm resourceful. So I go back digging, I go back researching, I go back talking to people, calling people, figuring it out. And then there you go. Okay, I found a factory in China that can do this for me. Let's start getting some samples made. Let's start looking at swatches. So I'm like teaching myself along the way. But again, I'm a student always. So I'm always researching, asking questions. Like, Google's your best friend.
Yeah, it's so true. Sadie, you got to put this in the chat. I'm a student always. That is a gem to have every single person embrace. Okay, we're going to come and unpack that about China and everything. But you know what, Ariel, I got to go in this direction because I know my audience is going to love to hear this part. I love how you're just very logical. Okay, I need to do this. I resource it. I now go here. I go here. You're very logical. But what keeps a lot of people from doing that is not having that confidence inside. I have people say to me all the time, Ariel, well, I need to call a vendor, but I'm just a little peon and I don't feel confident negotiating with them and I don't feel confident talking with them. I hear that, but you resonate within yourself a strength and confidence that you may not even know where it comes from. But I just want to ask you, how did you get that confident? Did you have these times where you were nervous talking with people that you felt you weren't at the stage to have this conversation? And what can you tell our audience to have that feeling of confidence to do the research just like you did?
For myself, I don't know. I think I realized this very early on in my life. I literally have a fire in the pit of my belly. And I've always been a dreamer. I've always dreamt of bigger things and just a bigger world, and wanting to live and feel, touch, feel, see, just all the things. And so once I came out here to LA, I was broke. I had $200 in my back pocket in my 1998 Camry, the Toyota Camry. Like, when you don't have nothing, like nothing, I don't have nothing. I'm organizing my clothes in my trunk. I'm doing my laundry and folding my clothes up and organizing them in my trunk of my car. There's that beast is woken up. Like, everything, I need everything that I can get. So I'm calling, I'm asking. I might not sound knowledgeable about this yet, but I'm going to keep calling. I'm going to call and I'm going to learn the business because I'm talking to you every day. So what I used to do, I could go see my reps. Even if I couldn't buy a shoe, I'm going to talk to my reps so I can understand the shoe business. I want to understand the shoe business. I want to understand what's the process that you guys go through to develop these shoes and present them to us. So you guys are dealing with people in China. You guys have a factory in China. This is the whole process. This is the step of making a shoe, getting it's just, I don't know. I'm going to learn. The student part, always being a student and willing to submit into that and learn before you move forward with things, that gives you the confidence to then go into certain situations with that confidence. Sometimes I do nowadays, sometimes I do like just kind of being in my space, where I am, sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm not ready. Like everything's not fully together yet. Like I don't need to have this conversation with this person just yet. Let me get my things together and then I'll go talk to this person. I don't want to waste their time. I don't want to waste my time. So I think sometimes that does get in people's way, but I think you just kind of got to, you kind of got to know where you are and what, like, if you're not ready for certain things and you're kind of just like not ready, like, but then how can I get myself best prepared to go really talk to this person and make the most sense where we can like get to the finish line with what we need to achieve. Yeah, the belly of the beast, it really just depends on like what do you want? What do you want? What are you doing this for? What's your purpose? And like sticking to that, like at your core, no matter what.
I love that. Belly of the beast. That is wonderful. It reminds me of the song Janis Joplin, Freedom's Having Nothing Left to Lose. And it does, because I remember being in my early 20s, relocating across the country in a 210 Datsun, having no money in my pocket. And there was this moment I was driving through the Midwest and I was like, well, I have nothing left to lose. I have no money. I have nothing. What's there left to lose? And I think there is a certain survival instinct that comes in that actually benefits you throughout life, because no matter what, you can pick yourself up and keep going. That's a phenomenal story. Gave me goosebumps. Thank you for sharing that. So, going back to what you were saying, you didn't have really the money to invest. You didn't have the rich aunt giving you all the money and the cash. And you first started out selling other people's shoes and then went to designing your own shoe. So how did you start? And you don't have to get into specifics, but just a general idea. How did you start with no money and then get everything going where you could eventually purchase this quantity? And then also, can I put one little part in, because I want to go there too? Everything you were selling, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, was online. And I want to bring that into the story too, and just let you go, because you have done a phenomenal job of selling online. I was just amazed. And you can share with the story what you want about the number of products, but you have an nominal revenue that you sold online in a short period of time. I looked at that and went, oh my God, how did she pull this off? So I'm just going to let you run with, getting it together, getting the products, and, how you sold it, because there's a lot the audience can hear from that.
So living on my cousin's couch, again, my overhead wasn't much. But so then I was working. I had a job at Forever 21. I was a what was my position? I used to get there at 5 a.m. and be done at 12. And then I finally got production jobs. So I started working in production doing commercials. So I'm getting paid like $200 a day. So if I keep going, a week's pay is $1,000. 14 days pay is however much. So my overhead is low. I'm paying my cousin like $300, $400 to stay on her couch. So eventually I started saving my checks. And a case of shoes back then, like, maybe like $300 to $400. So I started off buying a case of shoes, one case of 12 shoes. And I'm flipping and I'm investing my work checks into doing photo shoots. I'm paying a photographer. I'm fitting a model. I'm not making any money, but I'm building up and I'm making this look beautiful. Like I'm not shooting this in a car on a sidewalk. Like I'm renting studios. I invested in it very early, but I was that chart you just shown, I was the negative 180. You know what I mean? But it was like I was still investing my work checks to get me to a higher level, and I understood that investment. And I'm talking to you today, and all the things, the achievements that you talked about, is literally from the fruits of that previous labor. Investing that early on to make such a beautiful story. That's what we're known for, telling that story and our storytelling through pictures and portraits. But I started off with a case of shoes, and it just didn't cost that much then. And before I left my cousin's house, I think I had like $10,000 saved. And so then I was able to move into my own apartment. I was able to continue my business, but I was working nonstop in production. So I'm working as a freelancer, but I'm working 30 days out of the month. 16-hour shifts sometimes, but I'm working and I'm investing in my brand. And I started in 2015. I didn't stop doing production until December of 2018. And then by then I had like money in the bank. And then I remember I had like $10,000 put to the side, and I was like, okay, this is it. Like, if you want to get your business as high as it can go, your wildest dreams, like, you're gonna have to give it your all. So you got $10,000, and this is what you gotta, and then from there I just kept going and going and going and going. But yeah,
See,
pancake
yeah, I knew. I told you. I knew from our little contact that because we never really got to talk about the story because we were working on the project together. I was like, there's a story. There's a story beyond what I even imagined there to be. And it's interesting something you said about spending the money on the photo shoot and getting the product to look like a very professional product right from the scratch. You are not the only one that has said that to me. I've had several people who had a product and they dug in their pockets, they digged up everything to make sure the packaging was beautiful and perfect. And at the time people were going, you don't even have any money, why are you just get some cheap package? And she said, no, I'm going to sell this product for a good price point. It's got to have great packaging. So I just find it interesting that you are not the first person that said that. And I guess it makes sense. Why do people buy, especially visual things, how it looks, how the pictures look, how the packaging looks. So I guess I'm saying to everybody out there, don't underestimate the power of beautiful packaging and promotion from day one. That's a really great takeaway I got from that story.
Yeah, it wasn't always financially right, but eventually we got there.
But life is a gamble. I always say entrepreneur is risky and you take chances, but I like to correct it immediately. You take educated chances, right? And so yours was still an educated chance. You had direction. Most people are like, well, I'm going to put the money in it. I don't know, that's not a risk. That's just being foolish. But when you're taking an educated chance and you're saying, well, I'm kind of, that old saying, robbing from Peter to pay Paul, but I know where I'm going with it. That makes a whole big difference. So where I want to go now is start digging through this designing your own shoe, because for me, who knows nothing about fashion, all that sounds daunting as can be. And then getting someone to produce it and deal with minimums, and then calling around in China when you were like, I'm getting this shipment from China and I've been negotiating. That's your conversation you had with me when we're talking, like, I negotiate with them and I'm getting them a better price point, and help me understand what my profit has to be so I can tell them how much I'll pay the shoe. That's why I was like, I got to get her on this show. Oh my friggin' God. So walk back through that, because there was so much wisdom you said in a 2-minute phone call when we were talking one time that I was like, how do you know all this? How did you figure all this out? And how did you get so strong in negotiating? So walk us back. You designed to do the shoe. What do you physically do to get to that point of actually having shoes being shipped from China?
So through the pandemic, again, I quit my job a year, I think I had COVID in the 2018, like the very end of 2018. And it, like, life was just spinning, and then the world shut down by March. And so the factories that I bought my shoes from, the vendors here in LA, shut down as well. So for a month, nothing was coming in. It was completely silent, which was something that I had never experienced. And so I ended up getting a DM from a factory. She saw my brand, and she was like, up and coming factory in China. She DM'd me. And then from there, I had already had samples being made with one of my vendors because we were going to write a white label. So I was kind of already on my way. I had designs, I had pictures. I hired a teacher from FITM. She moved to take care of her grandfather, but my friend introduced me to her because she went to FITM. I hired her on to teach me how to design and draw. I still don't know how to draw, but I was just walking her through what it looks like. So she already had drawings ready for me. So I was literally preparing myself to get ready to start designing. I was just taking it slow and surely. Again, I'm a student always, so I'm going to take my time to learn so I know what I'm talking about. So then once the world shut down and I wasn't making any money, no one knew what was going on in the world. Like, no one knew what was going to happen. We were all just like, wow, And so once China reached out, I'm like, okay, I got to get to China. Like, I got to start making some slippers. I got to make these heels. So what are we doing? So I started off with samples. And me and a friend, we did a collaboration. So that's what kind of like took me off with designing our own shoes. So basically, like, I'm going back and forth. I'm communicating with my factories at night. So we start talking around 6 p.m. into the wee hours of the morning. And the first conversations, the first shoe that we did, I think I did like 5 samples. Did something happen? Hi, Sadie. Did
Yeah, no, as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, where's Lori? You know what, let's just give it a second. But you know, we're here, we're live. So I mean, I invested in this story, and I know Lori's just gonna hop right back in and be like, I missed that part. Just, you know what? I think the audience wants us to keep going, but Lori is here in spirit. That's what we're gonna say.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, so I continue working with the factory in China. However, those first conversations and first negotiations were super hard and frustrating, but I had to work through it with her, and I couldn't really be lax. I had to really be on her. Like, I realized, like, sometimes dealing with certain factories, like, if you let certain things slip, they'll just run with it, even though they're the professionals in, doing work developing shoes and production of shoes. So I was super firm, and I think I learned as I went, and kind of like on my own dime. Like, I've definitely gotten a bad batch of shoes that was not what the sample was, so I had to learn through mistakes and just on my own dime, unfortunately. But as I continued to grow, like, I started to realize, okay, I need to find another factory, I need to find higher quality. Like, it just, just continued to learn and build as I went along.
I mean, I'm so fascinated by this. I see that Lori went on, and you know how it is when it comes to tech issues, but whenever stuff like this happens, I'm like, this is what being an entrepreneur is. Things happen, right? Where you're like, tech will go down, and it's like, you know what, you just got to go through it. I mean, when you were telling that COVID story, I was like, yeah, that's really when you had to, like, I would say,
Pivot.
yeah, I mean, you just really had to, like, say, okay, where do I want to go from here? Like, I mean, you're questioning your reality, right? Like, this is like what I was hearing from a lot of people, where it's like, what do I want to do with the rest? I mean, we're dealing with mortality and all this stuff, and it's like, it's so awesome. And this is like, you know, with entrepreneurs, when it's like you're getting into that vibe of, you know what, we have to know what we are passionate about. And then when it doesn't matter, when it's like the lows of the lows and the highs of the highs, it's like, no, you're going to figure it out even if you need to. So I
Yeah.
see Lori is back right there.
Did I disappear or did everybody disappear? I don't even know.
I think you disappeared, Lori, but you missed the story about the shoe modeling.
I did, I didn't know, because all of a sudden I was like, I never disappeared on my show before. So I was like, did I just disappear? How did that happen? I have no idea why I disappeared, guys. I thought you all disappeared. So sorry about that. So, but I can see you picked up Sadie. So I know that I'm going to take vacation for a couple weeks. Sadie's going to be the host. Like
No,
I said,
no,
I
because
I
you
never
asked the good questions. You asked the good questions, because I was like, oh, where does Lori want me to go after the shoe design? I'm like, but I want to know more about Ariel, because you know what I love about Ariel is that she is her authentic self. And
Oh yeah.
she always, like, I'm like, this is what I'm really getting out of the story. I'm like, I want to know more. I'm like, oh, so what did you get into, like, you know, the new manufacturer, right? And then we're in China and it's these new people. Like, what happened from there?
Okay, well, Sadie, thank you for picking me up. And if something happens and I take off, it must have been something in the area or something. Because, like I said, I don't know why that happened. But let's go on from here. So I know you went through the modeling and the shoe and all that. So then you had to fund and deal with the shipment from China, and that is daunting to many, even with tariffs and fees. And I know they help with that, but it's still a daunting procedure and quite a risk. Yeah, So talk about the whole experience of now purchasing from China in any angle that you want.
Yeah. So we were talking about the factory. Yeah. So now the shipping part is another beast. Because the shipping costs just as much as the shoes, if not more sometimes, especially around a certain time period. So as I continue to grow and buy more quantities, like, the best thing to do is to put things on boats, because it takes a longer time period, so you're paying less. However, me being used to buying vendor shoes and I'm able to get them like super fast, I'm air shipping things from China. So that costs within itself, whether you're shipping with FedEx, where you're shipping with UPS, you know, they have options. But as I continue to grow, I started to work with DHL Express, who is great. You can find quotes. But then there's sometimes like the tariffs during holiday season. And again, we were in the middle of COVID. So it was just so much happening. And I had to eat a lot of like cost, especially shipping costs, because of like, I think one time I got like 40 boxes shipped and it was like an extra $1,000 like every 5 boxes, to where I got left with like an $18,000 bill. Then next thing you know, it was a $30,000 bill. And I'm just like, how did that happen? Like, that's more than the shoes. Like, what happened? You know, so I'm still kind of like dealing with, I paid like half of it down, but yeah, like it's a whole thing, like, but it's a conversation that need to be had. I think it's a lot of us that need to learn that, because there's different routes. There's different ways to go about it that you can learn to kind of like save yourself. And again, like for me, like I've learned a lot on the go, because things did, like it started slow through COVID, but then it picked up so fast. And sometimes that can hurt your business, but sometimes it can help your business, you know, so that's why you're able to see these like really great numbers, these strong years. But then it's like sometimes you see those dips and it's like, oh God, like, wait, you took a $30,000 loss, like you paid $30,000 for shipping, like that doesn't even sound right, you know what I mean? So it's just a process, and I've learned a lot on the go. And I mean, I'm still learning. I'm still talking to DHL and having negotiations. I'm still talking to UPS and having negotiations. Like it's always something, you know, especially dealing with overseas. It's just everything in the world, everything that's happening in the world affects that. And it affects us small businesses, especially when you're shipping.
Yeah. So was it ever an amazing moment when you said, okay, I'm sitting here talking about a $30,000 shipping fee, when at one point I was paying $300 a month for rent and I bought my first shoes with about $300, and now I'm talking $30,000. There had to be a moment, because that was a short period of time. You must have been like, whoa, how did I get here to this level? Not that the bill, but just the fact that you expanded and suddenly you're talking about 30,000 versus 300. You must have been just amazed at a moment there.
Yeah, I definitely had to pinch myself a few times. And like, even, but you know, sometimes it's a little hard because you're caught up in the rapture. Like at a certain point in time, my head was just spinning and I'm just like, you gotta go, like you gotta work so hard. You have to make these sales, you gotta pay these bills, you gotta get this done. So it's just kind of like, I didn't have time to like sit and think or just even appreciate those moments and just how far I come, because it's like I'm in the thick of this right now. Like you don't have time to pause. You're on autopilot and it's just go time. So
you know, I love your drive. I love your drive. I've always said, you know, you can knock me down. I may have to brush off my knees a little bit, but when I get up, I'm running, man. I'm coming. I'm running. I love your drive. I can relate to it. Okay, I want to ask you about this, because this is going to be a burning question of the audience. And I'm just going to say it for my own amusement and amazement. How in the world did you go to selling so many products online? You sold a lot and still are on your own online website, not because you've got a storefront, none of this, all online. It blows me away. So tell us about your online presence. And I know the audience are going to go, what's she using? What's this? So give us some details and just how you went around building that much of a customer base so quickly.
yeah, so it was a few things. Like when I did a collaboration with one of my friends who's also an influencer in the very beginning. And again, this was like the time we were already working on it before COVID happened, but COVID shut the world down. Me and her were like, we were even scared to like have meetings because we just didn't know we were like in masks, covered up with gloves on, like throwing the sample shoe to her because we're so scared to like touch each. It was just so much uncertainty, you know, around that time. So, but from there, like we built up, and I built up a lot of momentum. And because I'm able to work so fast with my vendors, I just kept the momentum going and really engaging with my customers, engaging with other influencers, and just really being super present online and building that community. During COVID, people didn't have anything else to do but sit at home and shop. So what I started doing was I started selling slippers, and the slippers were one of the things that we sold the volumes of because they're such an easy buy. So it's a 20 to maybe $50 at the most slipper, you know, and then we caught the eye of Oprah. So that helped. We were a part of Oprah's favorite things in 2020. So that really helped. That really united us. I have some of those ladies that shop with us. They've shopped like 30 times buying slippers for friends and family, you know, so that like we have a really good retention rate. And so that helps with volume. Like we bring our customers back because of our frequency of releases. Yeah, I think being super consistent, our visuals, and then that caught wind to bigger networks that allowed us to really be seen on a global level.
Wow, wow. And selling slippers at a time when everybody's sitting at home and even working in slippers was a beautiful pivotal point.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, so a couple things I want to pick up from what you just said. I haven't had too many people talk a lot about the use of influencers to help build their brand. I know it happens a lot, but we haven't had people on the show really talk about that. So tell me a little bit about what did you learn about maybe the power of influencers and any pro cons to using an influencer?
Um, I love influencers, and I think I started working with influencers at a very early time. Like I want to say like 2017. I started working with them very early, but again, I live in LA and I do a lot of my own like PR, if you would call it. Like I've always allowed people to come to me, pick up their shoes. There might be celebs or influencers that see a shoe that want it, I can deliver it to them that same day. So, and most of the times it was at that point in time, it was like, oh, I just want this shoe like super fast, and I'll bring more options. You don't got to pay me. I'm gonna post. I'm gonna make this outfit look good. You know, it was just super like simple. But now with influencers, like, you know, it's just a different world, and I respect that too, because that's a form of business as well. Now it's just I don't do it as much because we don't have the capital to do it, especially now in this shift of business with designing our own shoes. Like the focus is the product for me right now. Like that takes all the money. But eventually, yes, I will get back to using influencers and having them like a part of our like monthly business plan and monthly budget. But before, like I thrived on influencers before it was a whole like thing. And that
Gotcha.
really helped the business.
Yeah, and you know, Ariel, I have had some bigger companies that had influencers that succeeded quite a bit with influencers. One of the questions I have for you is, can a small business use influencers that they don't know? Like you knew influencers and you were in the thing, but can somebody in a small company get in front of an influencer? How would they contact an influencer? Petra also asked that, you know, how do you get in front of an influencer? So is that a resource that a small company can use on any level, or do you got to really be a certain level and know the great people? Or what would you do if you would, like, if I wanted to use an influencer, what would I do?
Well, I just think nowadays, like with influencers, I would try to find like not your largest influencer.
Right.
I would try to find micro influencers, people that
Okay.
don't have a huge following, but somebody that you can engage with and talk to, maybe build a relationship with them for a few months. You know, send them products for them to test out with no, you know, without expecting anything, you know, and then just continue to build from there. I think as a small business, if you don't have a huge budget to invest in influencers, I think it's important to kind of just like step in front and find those micro influencers that you can build and grow with, that like, you know, authentically like love your brand. Um,
Gotcha.
yeah. So that's what I would do. And that's how I thrived on influencers in the very beginning of business.
Yeah, the micro, not the wannabe influencers like me, but the micro influencers. Now, I also know just from us talking, you've over the years investing quite a lot in other types of marketing, I think, and I could be wrong on this, but you've done some Facebook ads or something like that. I'm not sure. I just remember us talking about it. So what other things, because you heavily invested in a lot of marketing. What did you learn along the way that you can share with our audience? Some things that worked, that didn't work, where you spent money you wish you wouldn't have, where you spent money and it turned out to be a gold mine.
Um, so when I first did Facebook ads, the business was just like, it was just not ready. And so I was spending money and I wasn't making any money, to where the lady that was overseeing, the ads manager, was like, I think I'm gonna like pause your ads. Like, I don't think that we should be running ads. We're spending a lot of your money and you're not making any. So once I got to the point, like once 2020 came and we started seeing that volume and that momentum, daily visitors, monthly visitors, like real good revenue, I was making over 20K at that point. So then that, like, sometimes when I talk to ad managers, they do say like, hey, like organically, like I would prefer to work with someone who is already making 20K on their own before they invest in ads.
Okay.
And that could be just their suggestion. I've heard different things. I've heard people say like, hey, you might be flat, you're not making any money. Let's run some ads and like build up, ramp you up. I don't know, when I wasn't making that money organically and I was putting money into ads, it wasn't working for me, but it was also a different time. Things have changed a lot, you know? So for me, Facebook ads have definitely worked. We've used them. We made great ROI with it. But just, I mean, I think continue to build, and just the analytics that it gets you, I think that's super important as well to kind of pay attention to, even if you aren't making the revenue from it. But
Got
I love being able to run ads. I think it's important for every business to look into.
Yeah. And now logistically, you're also having to, with people buying it online, you're having to make sure the product gets packaged and shipped. There's a whole logistics behind the scene that you had to figure, especially for the quantity of shoes that you started shipping at a very early age. I mean, I look at your numbers and I see your numbers went like this. So I know you had to have very little logistics for shipping and then suddenly be shipping a whole lot out the door, which must have been a little bit of a nightmare. So talk to us about the logistics of selling a product online and then trying to get it to your customers.
I think because I had so much practice with shipping smaller quantities, I kind of, so first, first I started out with a shipping company and I was paying the craziest prices shipping, just shipping. Paying for the boxes was just too much. But I learned this like very early on. I'm like, I'm paying too much. This isn't working for me. So I found I did the ship stations. I dealt with the ship stations. I dealt with Shopify, but again, Shopify is starting to ramp up. They're getting better. I think I was on Squarespace at first. I was on Squarespace at first, and then I moved to Shopify. And Shopify has everything super integrated. They make it super easy for that, like the logistics, the back end, that the operations of the business. They make it just flow. So when I was on Squarespace, I was paying like astronomical numbers shipping with FedEx or using ShipStation. But then now on Shopify, they just make it super seamless. And then by then I had already found the resources for packaging here in LA. Again, like this is the land for like entrepreneurs and small business to be able to do things. So I found a box company that, give you wholesale pricing. You got to give them your reseller's license, get an account set up. Yeah. I started getting into that. Like, okay, let me get these accounts set up. I'm trying to not get taxed on these boxes. Like I get tax exemptions. I started paying attention to those type of things because those things matter. Those things count. And then especially when you start doing volumes, I'm ordering 300 boxes at a time, ordering them, having them deliver them to me, so all that is important. And I learned that like super early on, but there was a time when I was making huge mistakes in shipping and costing myself like thousands of dollars for like not even a large amount of quantities. So I'm happy I figured that out before we got to the larger phase of the business.
And you seem to really have a good understanding of watching your profit margins. Now, I don't know if you always did, but now in our conversations, you're like, nope, I'm going to get this down. I got to get my profit margins. I got to get this. So you must have also taught yourself along the way the importance of really understanding how much everything's costing you and how much understanding the profit. And also you might want to throw in, I know, when I talked to you, you said you took over your own financials to handle your internal financials. I mean, like I said, this woman, she's just amazing. So talk to us about the financial, the accounting, the processes, and how you've learned to watch your numbers so closely.
Honestly, working with bookkeepers. So very early on, even before I quit my production jobs and I was just in the smaller phase of the business, I always hired bookkeepers. So I started understanding what they're looking at, how I can cut costs, even at that time. What are you paying too much for? Because again, I'm always willing to bet on myself and come out of pocket to pay for things, as I did very early on. But then she started helping me like skim down some of those numbers. Like, okay, wait, you don't need to be paying for this right now. Like no, don't do that, you know? And so that's kind of how I understood it. I had it in my mind at all times. But once I got to a higher level, I want to say 2020, 2021, my ads manager, she started looking at all of my analytics, and then that's where she got to the phase. She was like, wait, like she was like, you're selling so much volume, you're selling good volume, but we're still not making the numbers. She was like, these margins aren't right, like your average order value is too low, we got to get this up. So those are small things she started like working on with me, like, okay, let's get the average order value up. My average order value was probably like 67. And so then as we started developing, designing our own shoes, you know, getting better quality, getting exclusive designs, larger quantities of those things, the average order value started to go up to where those margins and those numbers started to make sense for everything that I was doing within the business, whether it's the logistics, buying the boxes, buying the packaging, buying the tissue paper that goes inside, buying the mailers that go on. All those things cost. You're spending tons of money to fulfill, you know, thousands of orders. Every little thing that goes in between that is costing you. So if you're not getting all that adds eats into, like, if I'm only the average order is $67, but I'm paying shipping, and I'm paying for the cost of the packaging to ship, like, you're not making enough money. You're barely keeping the shirt on your back, you know? So those type of things were something that she started making me pay attention to.
Beautiful. You know, see, that goes back to where I tell people you cannot sell enough out of a bad cost structure. When you're not making money, you sell more, you're just more tired and more broke. You can't,
Exactly.
you really, and you always, I noticed just from our conversation, you have that intuitive knowing of just the numbers. You know, you keep your eyes on it. You maybe don't know how to read a balance sheet completely, but you know where your numbers are, and people have to know your numbers. You impress me, because as I started to work with you, I'm asking a question, like, I got to, here's the number, here's this. I was like, she knows her numbers. She really does know your numbers. So that's pretty incredible on that. So one of the things that I want to make sure we talk about is just right around the corner, you have new designs coming in. And I want to make sure we talk with the audience, because they're not going to see them on the website yet. So I've been watching the clock. I'm like, I'm not going without you getting to talk about your brand new products that are coming online. Share with us what's happening.
So I'm working on, again, we're shifting the business to full, like, I'm not doing any vendors. We're literally, everything is produced and manufactured with our own personal factories, with our own designs. So it took us a little time to get things together, but now I do have 2 new styles coming for summer, that we're working on. It should be dropping within like the next 3 weeks. They're in production right now. We're going to get them in the air soon. I've done all the back end and the pretty marketing. It looks so beautiful. I can't wait to drop. It's some new mules with like some PVC straps, you know, just some really good stuff for summer. You can take on vacation, you can wear on the weekends. It's a really comfortable fitted mule that you can wear throughout the day with no complaints. Yeah. So I'm really excited. It's been something that I've been working on for a while, but we've had our own like internal struggles that we've been kind of just dealing with and trying to smooth out. So I'm really excited about this launch, and it should be coming to you guys like within the first or second week of June.
That's beautiful. You know what? It's just priceless to see that smile and the radiance that you have about your company and the new products. It's just a beautiful thing to see. So on one of the last things I want to mention, because I think the audience can be floored about this. So you have a staff of about 30 helping you, right? Right? That's your whole staff? You got 30 people helping you? No, it's just you doing all this. So let's talk about how you don't have this huge company and you don't have all these employees and everything. You are managing all of this on your own with really good people that are assisting you. So for those people who think I got to get a ton of employees and I got to do that, talk about just what you've learned and how you're managing all this so beautifully, with you really touching most of it, if not all of it.
Yeah, I think for me, it was just learning a lot on my own in the beginning, to where I can then transfer out and get certain help and tell them particularly what I need. People growing in the business with me. So then it's kind of just like, maybe it's 3 of us, you know, working in the company that I've taken the time to train on how to properly ship, on how to properly like help me run a campaign. You know, it's trial and error, and I can say that I've definitely failed forward. You know, finding the right people, knowing when to say like, hey, this isn't working for me, like I need to move on, and not panicking, because there definitely was a time where I held on to bad help that wasn't really helpful or useful, and I'm wasting thousands of dollars. You know, there's a lot of people that come and say like, hey, I can do this, I can do that, but it's like you're not delivering, you're over promising and you're under delivering. And this is like, I'm wasting thousands of dollars. Like my bookkeeper is asking me like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you spending all this money? Like, for what? How can you skim this down? You know, so I've definitely had to have hard conversations with myself and with people. But yeah, it takes time to grow and develop a good team. And I'm doing it by myself because I've been able to take the time to learn the entire system. So then I kind of like, now I feel like I know like the kind of help that I need, but it's all through trial and error.
You know, and speaking of that, you're really proved to the audience during the show is that when you're doing entrepreneurship and you're doing things and you have no experience, first of all, I think so many takeaways that I'm going to grab is that you don't have to have schooling or full experience to go and fill your dream, but you've got to be confident and resourceful and go after it and be a lifetime student, like you said, and get the information. And you make a lot of mistakes along the way and you just kind of recover from it and you keep going. You really demonstrated that through this entire interview. So any words you would like to leave with the audience on words of advice or parting information, I'm going to give you the floor. And speaking of floor, I'm floored by your story. I have to tell you straight up, it's an amazing, start from the very beginning, such a humble beginning. It's just, I just can't tell you how amazed I am by your story. But any last words for our audience today?
I say, I know the majority of everyone on the show is a small business owner, right? Or an aspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say really do the work to find the resources to help yourself. There's sometimes I've heard so many no's from the people that aren't necessarily meant to help me in business, but I think the resources are out there. I just think it's important for people to learn and not, there's so many gurus out here in the world now, especially like with social media. So I say like, really do the work to find the resources that can help you elevate in business so you don't make so many like financial mistakes. And then I think as long as you have the will to continue with business, don't give up, because I feel like I've been through so many hard spots in business where I'm like thinking like, am I supposed to continue doing this? Am I supposed to continue doing this? Am I supposed to put this down and like start something else? But then it's like, I always get that sense where it's like, keep going, finish what you started. So, even in your darkest days, when you're filled with doubt or debt or anything, like I say, like, as long as you have the will to keep going, I say like, find help and, continue to like do the work to get yourself to the next level. So like, all the pain and troubles and trials and tribulations are like just behind you and you move on to the next phase of life and business.
That is so beautiful. And a bit ago you said something like, and you said it really quickly, and I might have the words wrong, but you said investing. I'm not opposed to taking a risk on myself. In other words, I'll bet on myself. And I love that. And I think, I always used to say to myself when I feel like I'm not going to be able to go on, I go, well, I'm still breathing and I got to do something. So I might as well keep trying this. That was my theory. I'm still breathing. I might as well go on. But it really is about that ability to just push and persevere, but do it intelligently. And you demonstrated one amazing story with a mixture. So I'm going to come in and we're in a couple months, I'm going to get you back on the show. We're going to see how the new product is doing. I'm sure it's going to do well, and you're going to have a whole bunch of great information. So I just want to thank you, Ariel. Thank you for coming on. I knew there was a story behind this, but I had no belief or understanding the depth of the story. I thought, my relatives, they helped me. No, sleeping on my cousin's couch was the beginning of this story. Amazing. And you could see if you look at the chat for a second, everybody is just, and like I said, when you write in the chat, make sure you hit everybody, because I'm seeing some things that everybody is not seeing. And you guys are giving such wonderful, wonderful comments. Thank you, Chris, for making your comment. Make sure everybody sees it. It's just beautiful. So yeah, and Sadie, thank you for taking over when I mysteriously popped out. And so what you did is I now know I have a team, and Sadie's my team. And so Sadie, I'm going to take off the month of July, August, and September, and you're going to be in for just being the host. Okay? No, I'm
A
just
little summer
kidding.
vacation, right? You're working hard every week, Lori.
Yeah, I'm going on summer vacation. But Sadie, is that not an incredible story? I mean, we did it again. Another fantastic story.
Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do my own little pivot. And I'm going to say, and like how we started, we always do our little pre-conversations. I'm not going to talk about the amazing story because we all know it is. I'm going to go with, I can't wait to see what happens. Because, right? I'm like, ooh, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to be with, like, you know, my little sister, because I'm like, if you've already been on Oprah's, you know, best list over here, I'm like, what's going to be happening? I'm like, what are the other products that, you know, is going to involve too? I'm like, I see some party dresses, because I was actually looking at the website when we were doing this thing, and I was like, I'm like, all these boots. I'm like, we need some party dresses for these boots.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I didn't even get a chance to ask about Oprah, and we'll have to go there the next time. But if Oprah calls you and you want to know they say, "Hey, Ariel, do you know a great show host?" You know who to mention, right? Because that's me. I'm the next. Okay, I always got to do my own little marketing, guys. Oprah's gonna call me someday. Okay, to my frequent flyers, I saw Emma and Randy in the chat real quick, and a couple other people I probably missed. My frequent flyers that are here with me every week, thank you so much for always joining us to Always a Great Story. If this was your first time coming to the show, be sure to make sure you join us every week, or check out the post on YouTube, because you're always hearing about these fantastic stories, and they give you an idea, and they give you knowledge that, man, I can do this too. And check out Ariel's website and her products, and be sure to check back in 3 weeks for the brand new products. Sadie's going to stay behind a little bit longer. That way, if you can put in the chat, if you need contact information to me, contact information to Ariel, she's going to make sure you guys have plenty of time to put your post in the chat. Ariel, to be continued, and just many kudos and congratulations to you. I love your passion. I love your ability to just persevere. And I love your confidence in betting on yourself. That's just, if we all just could believe in ourselves just a little bit more, how powerful will we be? I mean, that's really a takeaway. Belief in yourself is such great power, and you definitely have it. So kudos to you on that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies, for having me on today's show. I enjoyed it.
You're welcome. Okay, bye everybody. I'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thank you.